Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 162. Thank you for being here. I am your host, Nathan Springer. It is currently the 22nd of December. The day before Christmas. No. The day before Christmas. Yes. Bro, in your opinion, who is the most inspirational black businessman in TNT? I have no idea. In my opinion, I don't have an opinion on that. On inspirational black businessmen in Trinidad and Tobago, I don't have an opinion on that. There are several qualifying factors in there. What do you consider inspirational? Like, what would you be looking forward to in terms of inspirational? Inspirational in the business field, as in terms of how quickly they excelled, as in terms of their business acumen, or in terms of how they give back to society, in terms of their morality, in terms of their family life. Which side of inspirational? Then you're talking about black. What do you mean when you say black? Are you saying black as in of African descent? Well, of recent African descent, because if humanity came out of Africa in the first place, then everyone is technically of African descent. So of more recent African descent, do you know that in many places they would consider both the Indo-Trinidadian and the Afro-Trinidadian to be black? So when you say black, exactly what do you mean? Do you mean Afro-Trinidadian? And then there's also businessman inside of that. So who do you include in that businessman category? I know many people have said, blessed good night, Kim Oliver. I've seen before, even in this live, many people have brought up the name of one Mr. Austin Jack Warner, speaking about inspirational Trinidadian businessmen and people giving back to the community and etc. You know, he has really done such a good job of that. Some people really do believe that. They hold him in high regard with concerns to that. But I was reading a story today that casts an interesting light on how you would hold Mr. Warner in terms of his role in Trinidad and Tobago. Even non-politicians. Well, interesting there. I don't know. I honestly don't know. As I said, I've never thought of that. But even Mr. Warner, I was reading a very interesting article today where they were saying that Mr. Warner was the one who paid for the Do So campaign. The Do So campaign from back in 2010. And really and truly, nothing is controversial. Yo, Krimak, what's the good, bro? Nothing is controversial about paying for a political campaign as a politician, really and truly. But it's what that campaign came to be in the long run. Guardian did an interesting expose. They did an interesting expose on that campaign and what it came to be in the long run, and the fact that Mr. Warner paid for it. The headline for that article in The Guardian, ex-FIFA executive Jack Warner financed election engineering campaign in Trinidad. Disgraced former FIFA vice president Jack Warner personally funded an ethnically divisive disinformation campaign in Trinidad and Tobago designed by an election engineering firm to discourage black Trinidadians from voting. Compliments of the season, says Ja. Same to you, bro. Good night, Tony the Ambassador. Free Mr. Warner, best World Cup ever. Yeah, Krimak. Listen, I kind of agree in a certain way to that sentiment where, you know, some people speak about the corruption of FIFA and the corruption of Mr. Warner, but then they're saying this was the best World Cup ever. I mean, without the bubble and corruption of FIFA, allegedly including Mr. Warner, we would have never experienced this Winter World Cup in the desert in the first place. This World Cup wasn't even supposed to be held around this time. This World Cup is a summer. It's the summer World Cup. summer games. But this was held in winter, this November, December period. Now, here's the thing. Mr. Warner and his previous groupings, his previous colleagues inside of FIFA, they regularly spoke about raising the global position of the global south. Regardless, they spoke about raising, the stature of the global south. And I could understand this because when people talk about the Summer World Cup, they take it for granted that they're talking about the Northern Hemisphere. For those of us who understand some geography, we understand that summer in the north is actually winter in the south. And winter in the north is summer in the south. So this probably was the World Cup for the Southern Hemisphere. The former heads over at FIFA, including Mr. Warner, had a really vested interest in, raising those smaller nations in the Southern Hemisphere. And they, through their unique methods, they were able to pull through a World Cup for Qatar in the desert. They worked around the difficulties of hosting a World Cup in the desert and had it done. They got it done. And many people are now saying that this may indeed have been the best World Cup finals ever. The game itself, the final of the World Cup finals between Argentina and France, some people are already heralding as the greatest finals of a World Cup game ever. Glenroy says, good night, that World Cup was designed for Messi to win it. Well, you're one of those, I see. You're one of those. Listen. I could understand why people believe that the World Cup could be rigged. Because, it's FIFA. FIFA isn't known for their outstanding honesty. Good night, true ninja. FIFA isn't known for their outstanding honesty. So, yes, you're watching at this and you're like, I think they could have rigged this. But here's the thing. To actually rig a game is not that easy, Like, if you go through articles of sport rigging, look at games that have been rigged. Look at games that have been known to be rigged in the past and see how they did it. It's nearly impossible to fully rig a game. Generally, what they do, there might be one player who does something outside, or there might be one official who does something. And if you're being honest, and you look at that game, the calls were not wholesale towards one team. Like, you're not being honest if you say that. The penalty in the first half was just as soft as the penalty that France was given in the second half. Really. It was not rigged in Qatar. Right? If you want to believe it's rigged, that's on you. But I like a good conspiracy, but too many people have to be in on this. You're understanding, like, how many people do you believe you have to pay off to rig a game? How many people do you believe you have to pay off? Do you believe you have to pay off the whole other side? If you're talking about paying off the whole other side of a football team, can you imagine how much you'd have to pay off millionaires for something like that? Come on, man. Come on. Like, I like a good conspiracy too, but we have to come better than that if we have to believe this kind of thing, this whole rig thing. But as I was saying, the reality is that if it wasn't for the good night Toyota everything Nissan nothing, good night sir, if it wasn't for the unique dealings of FIFA, we would not have had this great World Cup out there in Qatar. Most of the people who believe it's rigged are CR fans. Yes, they are. Yeah, many of them are Cristiano Ronaldo fans, and I don't understand why would FIFA like Messi over Ronaldo? Like, what's in it for FIFA? What's in it for FIFA? What if FIFA was rigging it? Why would they rig it for Messi and not rig it for Ronaldo? Like, why not? Why would they rig it for one and not the other? Is FIFA just all of a sudden overrun by Messi fans only? Like, man, the conspiracies got a little thick. The conspiracies got a little thick. They got a little thick. Messi is the GOAT, greatest of all time. Yeah, I might say that myself. Many people are coming now with many different suggestions to say otherwise, but I think he might indeed. Mbappe is the future. Well, might be. He might be. I mean, he has interesting choices in partners. I'll just leave that there. Ryan says, because Messi wouldn't be considered the same level of Maradona without a World Cup. Yeah, true. Most people are of that view. But yeah, Mbappe still has quite a bit of performance to continue doing to show himself as great in the future. And then the team he's playing for, I'm not sure how well they would ever perform in Europe. So that's a struggle he would always face there too. That's a struggle he would always face. You see, Messi suffered with not having performed for a long time, at least performed to serious heights in the Argentina national team. But he performed in his club team. Now, if it seems vice versa for Mbappe, he performed with France, he won a World Cup with France, but he hasn't won a Champions League. And to be honest, I don't see PSG winning a Champions League. So without ever having performed at the highest level and winning the highest level in Europe, it's going to be hard for him to claim that future greatest of all time position. He'd have to perform in Europe. And my personal belief is if Mbappe wants to get that greatest kind of claim, he wants to be up there, he shouldn't stay at PSG. He should have moved in last season or the season before that. He needs to go somewhere else. He is 24, yes, but 24 is the moment when you're supposed to be shining already. At 24, Messi was shining on the European stage too. So he does have time, but it would be interesting. The man's still young. Young is relative in football, you know. Young is relative in football. 24 is young, but 24 isn't super young in football. Really young in football would be guys like Gavi, guys who are now 20, guys who are 19, guys who are 18. That's really young in football. 24 isn't really young in football. So exactly. Mbappe, he needs to perform in Europe. So what Mbappe, I'm not sure what you're saying there. His first cup was 19. And for that he would always have that on his record, a World Cup. He would always have a World Cup on his record. But here's the thing. He has accomplished a World Cup. That's his main accomplishment is a World Cup, which is a great accomplishment, have no doubt. Many players play their entire life and never won a World Cup. But there are many players who have won a World Cup and aren't considered in the greatest kind of conversations. They don't count finals. They count cups. And he has one World Cup, which is a massive accomplishment. But for example, let me put it this way. Mbappe's name is already in the history books because of his performance in the World Cup. But if he wants his name to go into the history books as being a contender for the conversation about greatest ever player, he'd have much more to do. That's just the reality. Bro, you are good, but leave football out. I actually talk a lot about football. Please, bro. Listen. It's not only my opinion. I'm talking about here. Pele was a different era. Pele was a different era. Pele was an era where European football was not at the top flight. The reality is, Messi was already in the conversation about being the greatest ever player without ever winning a World Cup. That's to tell you the way how football is viewed in the current context. It's viewed mostly at the club level. When Pele was playing, it was viewed more as a national sport. Yes, I am not saying he does not still have a lot. Yes, he does have a World Cup already. I've said this already. I mean, Dembele has a World Cup. A lot of the French youth have World Cups. Or a lot of them are in the same realm as Mbappe in terms of their cups. People are biased towards Messi. Like, I don't... to me, anyone coming up with the name Mbappe in a conversation about Messi is someone who started watching football last year. That's my opinion. Anyone talking Mbappe in a conversation about greatest footballers with Messi, they recently started watching football. I mean, I understand Mbappe is an exciting player. I'm not taking away from the youth. He's an exciting player. I like watching the man play. He is a very skillful, great player. But he isn't nearly at that level yet. That's like if you're talking basketball and you're saying Ja Morant, and you're calling Ja Morant in a discussion with LeBron James. Those two don't go together. Ja Morant is an exceptionally skilled young man in basketball, but he isn't yet close to the longevity and the amount of accolades that someone like LeBron James has. I mean, the conversation isn't the same. How can you be talking about people being biased towards Messi when you're talking about this conversation with Mbappe? Like, give Mbappe a chance. The man doesn't even have a Ballon d'Or yet. He doesn't even have a Footballer of the Year yet. Listen, I was hearing somebody talk about this. Mbappe has had a prolific year of goal scoring. One of his best years of goal scoring ever Mbappe is having this year. Haaland, Erling Haaland from Manchester City is also having a prolific year of goal scoring. Both of them really are scoring goals this year. If you combine their goal tallies, both of their goal tallies for this year, they still have not reached the amount of goals that Messi alone scored in 2012. 91. Like, I mean, if you started watching football in 2020, I could understand how some of the younger players could excite you, and you may not know how prolific players like Cristiano Ronaldo were and Messi were. There's a reason that those two names were being called as the greatest of all time for over a decade now. The men have their performance already in past tense. Mbappe is still looking forward to that kind of performance. When Mbappe crosses 70 goals in a calendar year, then maybe his name could be brought up in the same conversation. But allow the youth to grow. Like Stokely, Mr. Stokely Clark, you seem like you're an Mbappe fan. You're an Mbappe fan, and I understand that. You can be an Mbappe fan. But let's be realistic here. That's crap. It's about the narrative. Samuel Eto'o, Drogba. Yes, great strikers. Still not on the level with Messi. And I am willing to wager, if you ask Samuel Eto'o or Drogba, they will tell you that they aren't on the same level with Messi also. Yes, bro. Yes. I see you there. And I understand. I understand you're a fan. I hold it. He isn't at that stage yet. That's all I'm saying. Like, I don't know if you think I'm criticizing Mbappe as a player. I'm not. I really am not. I like the guy. But, I mean, he is not yet at that stage. It's just, he is not yet at. Yes, I know they never got a Ballon d'Or. And neither Samuel Eto'o nor Didier Drogba, neither of their names would be in the discussion about greatest footballer of all time. Eto may have, yeah, may have. What conversation are we having here right now, Mr. Stokely Clark? Are we having a conversation about great players? If we are having a conversation about great players, then by all means Mbappe is included in that. By all means. If it's a conversation about great players, yes, there are many great players out there. But I thought the conversation we were having was a conversation about greatest of all time. I mean, Mbappe isn't even the greatest striker yet. I would say Mbappe hasn't even crossed Ronaldo Nazario. He hasn't even crossed Fat Man Ronaldo level yet. So he isn't even the greatest striker of all time. So, like, grab it, Mbappe. Grab it. Yeah. So, someone asked about the murder rate. Well, the murder rate is breaking records too. Kermac, Ronaldinho. Dino may have been my favorite player for a long time. But the problem with a lot of those Brazilians, I personally feel people watching how much money a player makes than experience. Probably. The problem with Brazilians constantly is longevity in the game. Ronaldinho spent, what, 5 years at his top flight? If so long? How long was Ronaldinho at his top flight? And then he started to get overweight, and there were complaints about his discipline level. Fat Man Ronaldo was similar too. Fat Man Ronaldo, his career got cut short because he got fat. What was Adriano? Another great Brazilian footballer, Adriano. He stopped playing football and went to be a criminal mastermind in Brazil. Many Brazilians, they seem like they just don't have the longevity. They don't have the longevity. Stay blessed, Stokely Clark. Stay blessed. Many Brazilians seem like they don't have the longevity. And in nearly all sports, if you really want to reach at the top, that greatest conversation, longevity has a big part to play in it. A large part is longevity. Speaking about how long you lasted there. All right. Any other questions? Or is it still sports we're talking about tonight? Stokely, you're still on football. Rhea, we just finished. Stokely was saying, that I should stay out of football, but you might not believe, Stokely, but some of my greatest debates have been about football. Why is my light getting dimmer? Some of my greatest debates have been about football. Good night, Speaker Pelosi. What's the good, bro? Yes, Nisi. Thank you. Thank you, Nisi. Thank you. Thank you very much. Where the rest of the interview with the corporation chairman? Tony the Ambassador, did you take in all 1 hour 43 minutes that is on my YouTube? There's 1 hour and 43 minutes on my YouTube channel. Now, the actual conversation went on for 3 hours. It was a really interesting conversation. But I am now starting. There were some technical difficulties. If you listen to the conversation over on YouTube, you could hear some of the audio being a little choppy. And the visual cut out after a while. So I was like, we'll stop right there. But the conversation was really good. And he's willing to have another conversation if we're going to go back into that. Speaker Pelosi says, I'm good just holding on to my 3 weeks of power, Speaker. Hold it on strong. And I have another conversation lined up already. Don't worry, the conversation's already lined up. Quite a few. And I to me, I would do another with him. I would do another with him. And I would do another with many people. The intention is to do many of them coming as the time goes on now. And I like that format. I like that format. I learned so much in that conversation. You know, like you could criticize the corporation. You could criticize what so many corporations do, what the government does. But do you really understand it? Do you have a good understanding of what it takes to do this, of how much money it takes to do this, of how much money it takes to pave this road, of the fact that there's a balancing act needed there. If you pave this road, then you can't pave this road. If you do drainage for this area, then you can't do drainage for this area. And it's a nice, it gave me some good perspective on the understanding of local government. And conversations are lined up already. The next conversation is going to be on the business of manufacturing and manufacturing and import export in Trinidad and Tobago. I'm not going to say who it is going to be. You will see when the conversation jumps up. But there are conversations already lined up, and I have interest in all. And really and truly, the conversations will not be secluded or left only for important people. It's really and truly for anyone. So, you know, if you have an interesting idea you'd like to express and have a conversation about it, hit me up and we'll see if we could organize something along those lines. Or if you know someone you think would be an interesting conversation for me to have, an interesting conversation to have out there, let them know and let me know. It really gave good insight as to how things really run. Yeah, Tony the Ambassador. It did. And I was watching the comments with Wendell Wallace. I don't mind. Tell him, well, you could give me his contact or give him my contact, and we line that up. And I was reading the comments after, in the little snippet I posted on TikTok and Instagram and stuff. And many people were saying a lot of the same things that we were talking about in the conversation. I was looking at many of the comments and like, why you need to go listen to the entire conversation. And granted, the man is a politician. He has his political bias, but that wasn't what it was about. It was trying to understand the job at hand. See, the cough isn't totally gone yet. I would love that, Wendell Wallace. Oh, Rhea, let me up. Sorry. I didn't even notice you were there, Rhea. My apologies.
Good evening. Compliments of the season to you all.
Good evening.
YouTube or wherever it is. TikTok. I hear you. Both you and him are saying that at the end of the day, the regular citizens don't understand the due process, don't understand the balancing act, don't understand everything else. However, and I'm not saying that is either my way or the highway. However, even in what they do and how they do it, just the fact that there are still things in which they personally benefit from, while leaving the things that they're supposed to see about as politicians up in arms or not seen about, with the concern, with the urgency, with the gusto that they had during elections, to me will always and forever be a problem. So I understand, yes, the process, the tender, the this, the that.
Here's the thing, eh? I'm saying this now. I agree with you, Rhea. And I am on your side about delivery from politicians, but I am, for the sake of this conversation, being an advocate for the politicians. But I do agree with you. I'm just trying to give a balance on this. What he is saying is he agrees also that the baseline level of service needs to improve. They are not providing the correct level of service. He is saying that. But the reality is there are infinite wants from constituents. They are just the amount that the constituents want is an infinite amount. There is never going to be enough resources to supply all that the constituents want.
Understood. Completely understood. But I do have a however. However, if it is you are past or present, future government, right? And I mean, you try to balance your resources. You try to work out what you have. You try to balance, okay? If it is, you know, you have X amount of roads, for example, and I'm using roads as the easiest thing because you said local government, and local government just throw things on Ministry of Works just throw things on local government, the both of them just throw things on WASA. We don't ever know, we're not ever completely sure who is supposed to say about it.
Yes.
But if it is you have, and I'm being unreasonable with this number, but just for easy number's sake, if it is you know you have 100 roads in your country, or let's say in your constituency, wouldn't you learn to manage to be able to service those 100 roads? Or that if it is, there is one particular road that cannot be serviced now, wouldn't you, as the people who are leading, offer alternative routes in the meantime that this one road is down? Or something of the sort?
But here's another side to here's another side to that. You have to bear in mind that politicians who are elected now are elected into a system that already exists in the current form. They are elected into a system that already exists in the current form. Krimak, on the Rohan and Crap part, that's why you may need to go listen to the full interview, because he explains that the Ministry of Works is only responsible for 21% of the roads. So very likely, if you are angry about a road, a high chance is that road may be the fault of the local government area. But yeah, you have to bear in mind that they are elected into a system that already exists as it is. So they're trying to work within that system. If you are now elected as the chairman of a regional corporation, you are elected there, you know now that you're given 10 million to see about all of your infrastructural needs generally. That's what you're given. You now know that that is impossible to take care of all of the roads and drains in your corporation. You know that. So you have to make a decision about where would take priority. No matter what decision you make, some people are going to be very upset about that.
Understood. However, just the same way that when it is you pay for a service, you expect guaranteed results, as we're talking about roads, for example. If it is, I pave a road, you pave a road, and in 3 weeks or 3 months, that road goes back to being terrible, pothole central. The same pothole that was there has now returned, or 2 potholes in place of that one pothole, or where it is they paved or pitched. Doesn't that also kind of testify to their lack of follow through? Because why would you continue to give jobs or continue to do work that is shoddy? Why would you continue to award contracts to people and they have no guarantee or warranty on their services? It's just basically whoever get the money, and them dip. So if it is, it should have another job. It's like, that's a next piece of money. But it's never that the work that was done is good work.
You know, you're talking about things I spoke about in that very interview. And you're right. I know that. And they know that too. Aside of that, I'm not saying...
But they know that, and they exist in a system that they know is not working. And there is nobody trying to change the system that they're operating in.
Here's the reality. That system, the way how that is nearly impossible to change. That's one of the reasons when I'm talking, I try to allow people to pull themselves out of the idea that politics is going to solve problems. Because the nature of that is it's nearly impossible for them to actually solve those problems there. So part of the problem he was talking about, when the regional corporation gets their limited amount of money for the year to see about the problems, when they distribute that, separate it into each councillor for each sub-region in local governance, the councillor might only have 300,000 to do a piece of road. Now, really and truly, what that road may require is a team to come in, take off the top layer, replace the entire foundation of the road, and then repave the road. Now, 300,000 is not going to do that. So, as the councillor, you're here sitting with your 300,000, wondering, what am I going to do? Am I going to now keep this 300,000 and people would say that I'm not doing anything? Or would it be best that I pave this road, even though I know this paving is only going to last for 3 years, but people are going to be happy at least for the 3 years that I paved it? And you cannot do anything about the budgeting from the finance ministry to send more money down to you to see about the road in the proper way. You cannot change that. Now, for me, what I was saying, and he agreed to that, is communication is key there. I think if you're in that position, what you need to do is explain very clearly to everyone you are servicing what you can and cannot do. What are the limitations and why those limitations are there? So that when the public is vexed about the hole in the road, that they know you paved last month and the hole is back again, that the public could know, okay, well, that wasn't really your fault. We're not to be vexed at Councillor Ria, we're to be vexed at the finance ministry for only supplying X amount of dollars, knowing that it's insufficient. Communication about it though is key. And to me, even in having the conversation that him and I had, that allows some more accurate communication, so that when you're upset, now when you're complaining, now when you're looking for someone to blame, you could be more accurate in the arrows that you fire.
Don't disagree there, but then this is the whole thing about government that kind of confuses me personally. And councillors as well with a particular political party, and government ministers and MPs with political parties. So is it that you're telling me after they're elected into government, there is no general meeting or discussion with these people, councillors, aldermen, MPs, ministers, etc., where it is they could all have these discussions? Is it that the Minister of Finance is just ignorant to what it is? Are the needs?
It's law. You see, the problem is we exist in a bureaucratic system. There are laws that. So, for example, he was in an example he was talking about is they have money allotted for one project, and they don't need the project as much anymore. He is trying to go use the same money that they had allotted for that for another project that is going to help the region. And he has to go right to the ministry, and it's public servants in the ministry, not the minister, the public servants in the ministry that have to work through this. And he's saying they are upset because it's going to be paperwork and all of that they have to do to change that over. And they're saying, no, they don't want to do it. Let's wait till the end of the financial year, and then you're going to have to deal with the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Works, and then you're going to have to deal with those under you. It's a bureaucratic system that's very difficult to get through, and the laws do that. So every time we complain about corruption, which is good, complain about corruption when it happens, I'm not saying don't, but when we do complain about corruption and then the government institutes another law to help stop corruption, so we don't want the chairman of the corporation to be able to spend more than 300,000 on his own, because we're afraid that he's going to take millions and give to his friends. So they pass a law. The chairman of the corporation could only pass contracts up to 300,000. Anything above that, he requires approval. So now all of the large projects inside of the corporation need to go through rounds and rounds of approval, taking months in order for something to happen because of a law that was created to try to prevent corruption. It's the bureaucratic system we exist in. And there isn't really a way to avoid that. If you want to avoid that, you go to countries like Qatar or Abu Dhabi, United Arab Emirates. Autocratic countries don't have the bureaucracy problems, because what the king or the sheikh or whoever is the supreme leader, what he says goes, and that's that.
But are these laws very effective? Because in the presence and corruption taking place, and not even on a small scale. It's pretty big. It's pretty blatant. So again, my question is, from the first question I asked, when it is you are able to tell us that yes, it cannot be done because of limitations and because of boundaries and because of lack of resources and because of this and because of that, but yet still, with the next breath, it is a corruption, this bribery, that thief money here, personal pocket here. Like, why would we as the citizens want to understand of the limitations when at the same time you all don't have limitations and all your pockets like deep?
That's the thing. A lot of the limitations are limitations on getting work done, but there aren't many limitations on corruption, because I mean corruption is illegal.
And why even from small contracts to big ones, why aren't we putting warranties as necessities for these things? Because even if it is a road is patched, I personally don't see why 3 weeks max is the time that you get with this paved road. I honestly, for me personally, if it is to pay for somebody to come and, okay, so I don't know much about like construction and thing, but what you just call that thing when it is you have bricks on and then you just put like the grating on it?
Plaster the wall?
Right, plaster. So if I pay somebody to come and plaster the wall, right? And then like after 6 months of living, I see the wall start to like fall down or chip away or whatever the case is. I don't know what the word to describe when it is. If it is, it should come off. Isn't that a defect from whoever did it? Am I not supposed to call back that service provider and be like, hey, before I have to come inside of here and everybody come and fix my wall?
Most likely it is. Now there may be other factors, but but here's the thing. If you do that, if you do add those contingencies where now there's a warranty, where if there's a fault in the road, you have to come back and patch it back at no additional cost. Well, very likely the initial contract price is going to go up. And remember, we're already talking about the balancing act of balancing the budget that they have with actually getting the work done. If now the road that they could get paved per year with their budget is only 20 feet of road, if they're doing that warranty-based road, would that then make sense? Because bear in mind, it might be the reason some of the work is so shoddy is because they're paying cheaply for the contract. Some of them. While there is now, as I said at the very beginning, I am being an advocate for the conversation. I know that there's government corruption and they aren't delivering services at the correct level. I know that. I'm just being an advocate to push the conversation. But yes, some of the reasoning they give is that some of the contracts are cheap. So here's an example. In Tobago, they're talking about, remember I spoke about this about a month ago, the Tobago Chief Secretary is saying they're going to redo how they're doing their infrastructure contracts. They aren't getting enough money. Per year to do the size of contracts they want. So they're going to allow the contractor to pay and do the contract, and then they're going to pay the contractor afterwards. Now, they're doing all kind of things to try and get the contract done in there, squeezing the contract. If inside of that, they want it to be done as cheaply as possible, maybe the contractor is going to cut costs to deliver it for them for the price they want, but they aren't going to get the quality they want from it.
Oh no, wait, but even in that what you said, where they put aside the X amount per year, whatever the case is, just the same thing. And I mean, yes, the Minister of Finance is the one who releases funds and who signs off on everything, right? If it is just the same way, we know it's more expensive.
Sorry, right? user 645 many numbers. I am listening, but for some reason I'm not getting the other screen to pull you guys up. I don't know what's happening there. But if you want to type something, I'll see it. I'm just trying to pull up the screen to get you guys pulled up, and I don't know what is going on right now with that. But go ahead, I'm listening.
Yeah, the same way we would know that buying one of those small sacks of flour per month will end up being more expensive than just buying a whole 10 kg that will last more months than buying flour per month. Isn't the Minister of Finance taking into consideration that in a term, and when I say a term, I don't mean a year, in a term, that 5-year term, that he would inevitably spend more money trying to maintain mediocrity than actually seeing about the problem properly?
Repeat that again.
Right. So the same way that we would know, like buying a small sack of flour per month would add up to spending more money than if it is you were to buy a 10 kg and have it last, let's say, 8. I don't know how people, I don't use flour, so let me say 8 months for me. Instead of buying, I don't use flour like that. I do not bake. I don't bake cake, bread, nothing.
Your flour have weevil.
I don't know how
if your flour is 8 months there, check the flour, there are weevil inside there, worms.
I'm just saying, right? Let's say it lasts that amount of time versus buying flour every single month. The cost is going to be less if it is you buy it in bulk from upfront.
Correct.
Right? So I'm saying the same thing with the Minister of Finance being the person who's supposed to budget us or budget the ministries or budget the expenditure. If it is every single year, he has to put aside X amount of money to maintain mediocrity, to maintain just patching and maintain just doing and maintain just that, as opposed to actually putting out money to say, well, hey, do this year, channel your resources. If we do this year, next year we will target these sets, year after we will target these sets, year after that we target these sets. And instead of trying to simply have everything maintained at a poor level.
I understand what you're saying. Now, here's the balance to that. There are people who buy the 5-pound bags of flour. There are people like that in the world. Although everybody basically knows if you buy the larger bag, it's more economically viable for you. There are still people who buy the small bags. Everyone knows if you buy soap by the big container, it's cheaper. But there are still people who go out there in the parlor and buy the one single soap. Everyone knows you buy cigarette by the pack, it's cheaper. But there are still people who go out there, and even though you're not supposed to be selling the single cigarettes, they're still like, let me get retail now. There are still people like that. You know, those who in the drug world know if they buy it by the ounce, it's still cheaper. But those in the drug world know there are still men going out there, let me get $10 now, boy. The reason is money limitations. So, yes, I am sure the government knows that. I am talking outside of corruption here. We're talking just practicality getting it done. I'm sure the government knows that. But there's a balance in there. The government does not have access to an infinite amount of money. As was said in that little clip, they have that corporation, the largest corporation in the country, has 170 million as their budget. 110 million is salaries. 44 million is garbage collection. I don't know her personally, user, but I remember the person. I remember her. It's garbage collection. So the problem is they literally do not have enough money to go out there and buy the 100-pound of flour. So they were saying, okay, let's buy the 5-pound to keep living in the meanwhile.
Okay, so just hear me out again. And this is something we have always been talking about for the longest while. Public service reformation, right? Is it that you are telling me that to maintain a district, it costs in human resources 110 million? that $110 million per year, is it really and truly working? Is it that these resources, these human resources, are all necessary, are all effective, are all making the world go wrong? Is it that these human resources, this $110 million, is it necessary?
Now,
is it money well spent?
I asked basically that very same question because you know me. I am of the view that too many people are employed by our government. That is my view. Now, I am still of that view. I am of the view that 110 million should not be there. The reason being that it's very difficult to get the best amount of labor for money when people are employed by the government. It's difficult to get efficient work that way. But his answer was that he believes to actually run his corporation, he needs probably 10 or 20 million dollars more in labor costs. Now, bear in mind, here's how he was breaking this down. His largest cemetery is 22 acres. Do you know how the manpower to cut 22 acres? You cannot cut it mechanized. You have to go in there with manpower to cut 22 acres with headstones going over.
Can I ask which one is this?
The Tunapuna, I believe. Stratham Lodge, I believe, is
But
the 22.
I meant the district. Because I'm not sure what exactly is the procedure, but I can tell you when burying my uncle and my father, that the only time at least from what I saw, the only time your grave is clean is when it is you pay for your burial. At least in the Porter's Spain district, there's grass growing everywhere, and like for Father's Day and thing, when it is you going to the grave, you go and clean it yourself.
Yeah.
I don't know, and if it is you want them to clean it for you, you pay them separate.
That's the grave. But the cemetery itself has general areas. If that is never maintained, you will have bush and trees growing there. So the fact that there isn't a forest there right now means that there's some amount of maintenance there. And they have numerous cemeteries. That's just on the cemetery side. That's what I'm seeing as the chairman of the corporation told me personally. So he's saying in terms of maintenance, they're understaffed. And here's my part to that. My part to that might be that it just might be Trinidadians have too much of a taste for government assistance. So as Ariel was talking about there with public healthcare costs a lot. But the alternative to that is private healthcare where you pay for it yourself. So if the thing is, we do not like the services that the government are giving us for the money that we are spending there, then maybe what we need to do is stop letting government take care of the cemeteries. Let's go for private cemeteries where each person who buries their loved one in there has to pay continually for the maintenance of that cemetery. Now, how many people in Trinidad do you think would approve of that? And that's part of the problem. Trinidad has a culture where we enjoy the government giving things to us. And because of that, the government needs an enormous amount of resources. And it's very difficult for us to accurately say exactly how much resources the government would need to give us the services we want. So here's what. If you want less of those services, then you could tell the government they need less of the resources to provide the service.
I mean, I agree and disagree at the same time. I understand what you're saying, and for the most part, I agree. But here's where I disagree. Where it is, you say specifically that if it is, like, why it is we so heavily reliant on the government or on the ministries for these particular things. My thing is, aren't they public services? It's not like, at least I don't think when it is things were being established, I don't think people gathered in Woodford Square and say, we want you all to see about the cemeteries. No, this is a public service, or the way in which things go, let's say, from the Destiny Hospital to the mortuary to the whatever, we could complain, yes, that the service should be better, because at the end of the day, the service should be better. There's no reason why, if it is you tell me come for 8 o'clock in the morning, why at 2 o'clock I still have not received my let's call it, my loved one's body, to be able to hand it over to the funeral home. There's no reason why the funeral home people should be there since 8 o'clock in the morning waiting for a transfer from your hands to their hands. There is no reason. For me, I just think that if it is, there are things that the government is providing, simply that they're providing, and whatever they're providing, we should just be grateful for it. I don't think is fair.
I don't agree with that. I agree the government is providing a service. It's basically like we're paying for a service. We're supposed to demand better service. I agree. The problem is it's very difficult to do that when you're talking on the government side. Good night, Shy Guy. That's very difficult to do. So if it is that you're saying we are not getting the quality of the service we want, they're taking more resources and we still aren't getting that quality, then maybe what we need to do is move away from the government supplying that service and see if we could pay directly for the service and get better service.
Wait, hold on, and then I still go back to where it is you are saying that we are still in need of resources, we still need more to be better, but again, on the flip side, people are pocketing. So is it that we don't have the resources, or the resources are not being managed well, or the resources are not being appropriately handled?
Both.
Is it that we like hear me out. Is it that we genuinely do not have enough resources, or after what happens, we do not have enough resources?
Well, the reason I'm saying both is because we exist in the reality where there is theft. So it's like if I am bringing in some kind of fruit, I would hope that all of the apples I bring in, all 50,000 of them come in whole. But some of them are going to spoil in transit, some are going to get knocked around and stuff. So I calculate for 10% spoilage. If I don't calculate for 10% spoilage, the reality is the 10% spoilage is still going to occur. So although we would wish that they don't steal, the reality is we know that the stealing does occur. So the reality is, with the stealing that does occur, we do not have enough resources to take care of all of the infrastructure as we would like it to be taken care of. That is just the reality. Now, here's how I am saying to get away from that. Take all of the resources out of their hand for certain things. I mean, I don't agree that we could privatize everything. I don't think so. But I do think there are indeed some more things we can privatize that the government does not have to deal with, so that we don't even have to worry about them pocketing the money.
I personally have a problem with a lot of government services being privatized, for the simple fact that we see with privatization, there comes a big salary increase. So, for example, when WASA was under Ministry of Works, they were just considered regular civil servants, public servants. WASA is now its own thing, and now instead of having regular PS and DPS and the director and the regular hierarchy going down, you now have this board with chairman and whomever and secretary.
Wait. Before you go on WASA, bear in mind, WASA is not what I'm speaking about. WASA is the opposite of what I'm speaking about. WASA is government restructuring a government company to have the structure of a private corporation, but it's still government because the government determines the board. That my problem isn't the structure being permanent secretary and all of that. My problem is when it answers to government, because public and government is not on the free market. They don't have to answer to the free market. You cannot fire anybody employed by the government. They are hired and fired based on politics. They are not hired and fired based on the quality of their service. You see, if Wassa was private and they do not provide water for me in my house, I will not pay them. If Wassa was private and there was a competitor to Wassa that provided better water, I would hire the competitor to Wassa instead of Wassa, and then Wassa would lose money and they wouldn't be able to pay their board and their chairman and all of the other higher ups that high salary.
Of utilities. But the reason why I thought it was going on that way is because right now the Ministry of Finance is trying to privatize the Revenue Authority, which revenue and customs fall under. So tax and things under customs and excise, all those things, all those ways in which revenue is created through that ministry, they want to privatize with the Revenue Authority. But in my head, I am thinking that if it is you do establish this Revenue Authority, you now establish the same way Wassa and all these places have their thing established. You now establish all these positions that you move from the regular standard persons employed in the public service to now have this board, and they are paid significantly higher. And you now have these people who are paid on a very different scale doing the same job than when it is the workforce in the public sector.
I agree, and there's a caveat. I agree that if and when they change it over, that is what is going to happen, a lot of pay increase, and yeah. However, that is not privatizing. That is just restructuring. Privatize would have been they sold it off to a private company to run. That's not privatizing. It is still being run by the government. It's still a public company. They just restructured, they just changed around the structure of the company. So when they change around the structure of the company, but they have the same runners, public of the company, the incentive structure, because my problem with public companies is the incentive structure of the company. So when Petrotrin was a public company, the CEO, chairman of Petrotrin, he is not hired or fired based on the amount of money Petrotrin makes. He is hired or fired based on his relationship with political appointees. So the company isn't going to run as best economically. It's going to run as best for his political benefit. And that's what we get with all of the political and public companies. They aren't run with efficiency in mind. They run with political ideas in mind. So changing around the structure isn't privatizing. Now, my problem with privatizing, I'm going to say it already. My problem with privatizing is the reality is privatizing things are going to make many people suffer. Like, just as I did see a brother the other day at C3, man didn't even take we on when we heal him out. I don't know, I wasn't there with him. Yeah. The privatizing of things is going to make it very difficult for people less fortunate. If you privatize healthcare and your child is born with some kind of complication, within the first 5 years of your child's life, that could cost you several $100,000 that you do not have. So that's the problem with privatizing. Privatizing is people who are already disadvantaged in the society stand a much higher chance of falling through the cracks. Now, with things privatized, that's where actual non-governmental organizations and institutions, religious organizations, churches, manders, mosques, etc., they would have to actually take up the slack. That's what their function in a society is supposed to be for. But if they don't, you have the reality where you privatize everything and people who do not have the resources to stand on their own are going to suffer. RL says it's going to segregate the society, yes, but we may not have a choice. You see, that's the reality here. That's the reality. The reality is resources are limited. You cannot just keep giving people something for nothing till forever. It's going to run out. And that's
even in that giving something for nothing, hear me out. I think the government is not properly looking at where to have the necessary increases. So, for example, every time the budget is to call, gas raising. Every time you want to have an increase in something, you're adding online tax, or adding tax to clear your package or whatever, or you're adding tax to alcohol and cigarettes, right? But I had an event recently where it is I had to go to the magistrate's court for a liquor license, for a pass, basically. It was a license for a night. You know how much that license cost me?
$100.
$10. So imagine in this carnival season that's coming up, in this Christmas season that's happening right here, all these promoters and whomever does throw party and fete and whatnot, they all have an events, and it's a whopping $10 per event to sell alcohol. So you mean to tell me instead you cannot raise that, even if you raise it to $100, so that you increase the profit margin coming through from the sale of liquor license? Well, this isn't even a liquor license. A liquor license is completely different. This is like what they call it's not a special event. Special event is for holidays. It's just like a day pass to sell alcohol. I don't even know how to explain
Well,
it.
you see, here's the thing.
$10.
If they raise that,
You're raising the wrong thing.
they may be able to raise that, but bear in mind, if they raise that, then people who go and get that pass just for a quick sale, they're going to say, well, now you're making the poor man suffer. As the poor man, I can't afford that. Them big bars who could pay for the liquor license and thing, it's only see about them thing, and look how the poor man suffer in here. He can't even go and get a one-day pass to make a little hustle. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but raising that isn't going to make people happy either.
No. What I am saying is that they always, to increase revenue, they always raise certain things, whilst it have other things. Like, for example, I can tell you, I think is in court, when it is you are applying for, when you're applying for, what do you call this? When you're applying for something, it's like $3 to file the application or some stupidness. So, and yes, I know I don't want to tell the government charge $300 and let people. No, I'm not saying that. But even if it is a raise it a little 20 now, like raise it a little thing, so that when people come and file, as I say, if you really want to increase your revenue, no, I don't agree with just raising your rates and taxing people to the point of nothingness to be able to say, well, they've been making a profit. We have always been talking about diversifying the economy, and I ain't know where we're reaching that yet, to be honest. But I am saying it have some services. It's just like come on, come on.
I understand, but personally, my view is I am not all that interested in the government in increasing revenue by taking it from the people. I think nearly no revenue that they need to increase should be taken from the people, because taking revenue from the people is a kind of opportunity cost. If I am a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, let's say I have access to $15,000 per month. If the government takes 5,000, then I have access to 10,000 using in Trinidad and Tobago per month. If the government takes 10,000, then I have access to 5,000 using in Trinidad and Tobago per month. Either way, it's kind of the same resources in the same country. It's just who gets to control the resources. And I think, in my opinion, I think the people should control more of their resources versus the government controlling more of their resources. I don't think the government should be taking people's resources like that. That's my view. Now, I think it makes sense that people pay for a service. If the government is providing a service for you, it makes sense you pay for that service. So that's how I think the government can raise some revenue. As the government provides a service, people pay for that service. But to just, especially, you see, it becomes tricky when the government is the sole provider of a service. If the government is the only people doing this one thing, whatever the government charges you for it, is the only price you can pay for it. That becomes kind of autocratic in terms of the pricing method. So you don't want to put an exorbitant price when there is no competition for the pricing. It becomes a ticklish thing. Will anybody else have a chance to speak? User, my apologies. Other people usually do have a chance to speak, but I do not know what is happening right now with my TikTok app. I've been stuck on the conversation screen for the longest while. I'm unable to switch to the screen to allow people up. My apologies. Usually other people do get up. Now it is 11:18, folks. We're going well along, and I think it's about that time. I could feel it in my voice, the tiredness in my voice.
I ain't done yet, but it's okay. We can tackle this again some other time.
I think I wouldn't be here tomorrow. Let's be real. I'm going to have some cleaning to be doing tomorrow. I should be here next week, because next week is a nice holiday week. We'll be here next week talking.
So Nathan, why don't go live when like you scrub the toilet and cleaning the decorative blocks? So why we can't see a man in action? I don't understand. So why we always get Nathan, the smart man? Why we don't get Nathan, the husband? Let me see you bake a little cake now, go,
Bake a cake? We will see.
Something now.
We might go. Careful what you wish for. I feel we will go live on some housework. I was power washing a whole day, and I was one night. This will make a nice little, those what you call ASMR videos where you just have a little something in the back. Because it was real therapeutic watching. There's this one mat that the dogs like to lie down on. If you saw the difference in color. Good stuff. Anyway, I will see you all, and I might do a live just like that. Look up. I will say it in the group. I'll say it in the Discord server. So, as per usual, if you're interested, if you're looking at this and you're interested in learning pods, we have our learning pods continuing. They are going well. I recently started one in the Marabella area. So if you have some students in an area, about 5 students would be enough, and you're still interested and you're not able to come to my location in Central, I would be willing to send a tutor or come myself and start a learning pod at your own location. So reach out. We can work something out. We are also starting our Montessori preschool. Classes are beginning at the starting of this coming year here in January. So if you are interested, if you have a preschool student and you're looking for a preschool Montessori style, you can hit us up also. Till next time, folks, it was nice as usual. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.